Welcome back, guys. Make sure you support by liking as well as subscribing if you haven't subscribed, please. Okay, so in today's video we're going to look at the triangles of the neck. Okay, the triangles of the neck. So before we get started, let's remind ourselves of our main objective. So our objective will be talking about the borders throughout the video, borders, the content, and then we wrap up everything by adding applied anatomy at the end. Okay, so let's get started without wasting much of the time. So this is someone's neck, though my drawing is not such accurate, but at least you can appreciate. Okay, on the middle of the neck, you can see here we have the line here which has been drawn. This is the imaginary line of the neck. Okay, then here in red here you can appreciate this big chunk of muscle. This big chunk of muscle is called sternocleidomastoid muscle. So sternocleidomastoid muscle is basically cutting the neck into two triangles. Okay, then superiorly you can appreciate the base of mandible. Then here down here, this is a clavicle. And then on the most laterally here, you have the trapezius muscle. Okay, so now what you are going to see now is that this looks like a triangle. Okay, so this is the anterior triangle, and then this is posterior triangle. Okay, then on the middle of the neck, you have this bone here, the only bone in the body which is not suspended to, which is not attached to another bone but rather suspended within the skin. Okay, alright, so this is how you answer the question on the triangle of the neck. So first you should be able to tell the marker that the triangles of the neck, they are basically divided into two main triangles, which is the anterior and the posterior. Okay, so before you go to subdivision, you establish the borders of the anterior triangle. If you are starting with the anterior triangle, if it's the posterior, you establish the borders of the posterior, and then you go in details if there is any division. Okay, so now borders of the anterior triangle. Okay, we can appreciate on the middle aspect we have the midline of the neck. Okay, on the middle aspect. Lateral aspect, this side we have sternocleidomastoid muscle, so this is sternocleidomastoid muscle. Okay, then superiorly here you can appreciate the base of mandible. Okay, so we are done with the borders of the anterior triangle. So the anterior triangle is further subdivided into four main triangles. Okay, so now these are the triangles which we are going to be talking about. Then we continue with the posterior triangle in the next tutorial. Okay, so now let's come over here for simplicity. Okay, so remember we had the midline of the neck, the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So what we have added, basically we have just added two muscles. Okay, so there is this muscle which is making a V here. Okay, this muscle which is making a V is one muscle. It's basically digastric muscle, but it consists of two bellies. Okay, so the first belly here is anterior belly of digastric muscle, as well as the posterior belly of digastric muscle. Okay, so you see it is making a triangle. It's cutting from here all the way up to here, and then it goes this side, making something which looks like a triangle. Okay, so the other muscle which has been added here is this one, the one which is a bit in dark red. So this muscle is called omohyoid muscle. Omohyoid muscle. So omohyoid muscle also is divided into two belly. So you have the superior belly of omohyoid, and then down here we have inferior belly of omohyoid. So that means the anterior triangle has been now divided into 4 sub-triangles. So I have decided to start with this one. So this is my number 1, 2, 3, 4 triangles. Okay, so we're going to work our way from here all the way to number 4 here, and what we'll be talking about throughout, it will be borders and then the content, and then we move. Okay, at the end we'll add crinkle correlation. Okay, without wasting much of the time, let's start with number 1. So number 1, so triangle number 1 is basically called submental triangle. Okay, submental triangle. So let's look at the borders. So on the middle aspect, we can appreciate the midline of the neck. Okay, so middle aspect, midline of the neck. Inferior aspect, you see you have hyoid bone here. Lateral aspect, you have anterior belly of digastric muscle here. Anterior belly of digastric muscle. Okay, so the borders, they are basically self-explanatory. Then the content, it says submental triangle. So the main content of this triangle, it is submental lymph node, submental lymph node. So that's the main content. Alright, so we are done with this triangle. So we go to the next triangle. Excuse. So the next triangle is called submandibular triangle. So submandibular triangle is also called digastric triangle. So this is the one which is number 2 here, which I have labeled number 2. So it's basically passing from here all the way to here to here. So it's also called submandibular, or you can call it digastric triangle, because it's basically bordered by digastric muscle. That's why it's called digastric triangle. But what borders it? Okay, so on the middle aspect, what do we have? So on the anterior aspect, rather, this is anterior aspect because it is bordered by anterior muscle, anterior belly of digastric. Okay, so the borders, or rather the boundaries, they are basically created by this same muscle which is cutting it. Okay, so submandibular triangle. So on the anterior aspect, excuse, on the anterior aspect is basically anterior belly of digastric. On the posterior aspect, it is still posterior belly of digastric muscle. Okay, what about the superior aspect? Okay, on the superior aspect, we still have the mandible. So if you want really to be specific, it's the base of mandible. Alright, we are good to go. Content. So the main content of this triangle, it is basically submandibular gland. Submandibular gland is one of the salivary glands. Okay, remember we have 3 main salivary gland. We have the parotid gland, then we have the sublingual gland, as well as the submandibular gland. Okay, so submandibular gland is basically found within this triangle. We lost it. Let's go to the next triangle. Triangle number 3. Okay, so this is the main triangle of the neck, or rather one of the important triangle of the neck. Okay, so it's called carotid triangle. So this is carotid triangle. Okay, the carotid triangle, what are the borders? Okay, you can appreciate here, superior aspect, it is posterior belly of digastric muscle. If we have superior aspect, obviously we have inferior aspect. Okay, so inferior aspect is what? Is superior belly of omohyoid. So here are the borders. So if you want, you don't mind, you can put it here. So on the superior aspect, we said we are having the posterior belly. Let me use the blue pen. Okay, so we have the posterior belly of digastric muscle. Okay, then on the inferior aspect here, inferior aspect here. Okay, so on the inferior we have the superior. Okay, so the superior belly of omohyoid. Okay, omohyoid. Omo means shoulder, then hyoid means there's a bone here. So this muscle is basically originating from the shoulder to the hyoid bone here. Okay, so basically on the superior and the inferior aspect we are done. Laterally, what do we have here? We have the sternocleidomastoid muscle bordering and the lateral aspect. Okay, we talk about the content. Okay, so the main content of this triangle, basically we're going to be just specific to the main content. So the main content is the carotid, obviously is the carotid artery. Okay, so the carotid artery basically bifurcate into two. So you know to say we have the internal and the external carotid artery, right? Okay, so now apart from that we also have the internal jugular vein. Okay, apart from the internal jugular vein we can also appreciate vagus nerve in this triangle. Okay, apart from the vagus nerve we can also appreciate facial nerve. Now bear in mind that facial nerve does not supply this triangle, it's just bifurcates into 5 main branches excuse, into 5 main branches. Okay, it does not supply. So if you're going to write facial nerve as one of the contents, you should be specific to say it just split, or rather it just split into 5 main branches. You already know the branches, the temporal, all those branches of which the back, or all those branches which you know. Okay, so now we're done with the content of this triangle. We lost it. Let's go to the next one. Number 4. Okay, so number 4, this is called muscular triangle. Okay, so in muscular triangle, what are the borders? Okay, so if we talk about the borders, basically on the middle aspect you have the midline of the neck, superior aspect hyoid bone. Now on the lateral aspect it is bordered by 2 muscles. Okay, so the lateral aspect has been divided into 2. On the most superior aspect, which is now this one, we'll call it superior laterally, it is bordered by superior bed of omohyoid, and then inferior laterally it is bordered by inferior part of sternocleidomastoid muscle. Alright, boom, we are done with the borders. We go to the content. So the main content, if I'm going to give you just one main content of this triangle, is basically infrahyoid muscle. So infrahyoid muscle, it is the main content of this triangle. Okay, however you can also find parotid, you can also find thyroid gland in this triangle. You can also find the larynx. Okay, even the parathyroid gland, okay, you can still find it, but the main one, as I said, it is infrahyoid muscle. So if you want to know infrahyoid muscle, there are basically 4. So we have the stenohyoid, okay, as one of the muscle. We also have sternothyroid, okay, then we have thyrohyoid, then we have omohyoid. Okay, alright, we lost it. We are done with the triangles, so let's add applied anatomy. So applied anatomy, so anterior triangle. So what's the applied anatomy are we going to add? Obviously we said the carotid triangle is the most important triangle, the anterior triangle. So on it we have what we call the carotid sinus, hypersensitivity. Okay, carotid sinus hypersensitivity. You know, in some individual you find that their baroreceptors are sensitive to stretch. Okay, so if you press any external pressure which is applied on the carotid triangle, it will end up to decrease of blood pressure. Okay, so you decrease blood pressure because you are basically pressing the baroreceptors. Okay, apart from that, we can talk of internal jugular vein puncture. Internal jugular vein puncture. Okay, it's one of the procedure which is used also clinically to collect blood. Okay, all right, so we're done with the triangles of the anterior triangle of the neck. So in the next video we'll talk about the posterior triangle of the neck.